Monetary Policy Committee meeting ends in Abuja, and as expected, MPC retains all rates. FARC, federal, state and local governments shares 740.88 billion naira for the month of August. And the Central Bank of Nigeria says it is committed to unlocking the growth and employment potentials of Nigeria. Plus, Nigeria ready to play in global gas market, says the NNPC. Details of these and more on Business Express, and it's reaching you from Abuja, the nation's capital. I am Leah Katun Babatunde. All right, the Monetary Policy Committee meeting ended just some moments ago, retaining all rates. The governor of the central bank, Godwin Emefiele, while reading out the outcome, said prevailing local and global economic conditions informed their decisions. Let's take some highlights.
That retaining the current position of policy offers pathways to appraising the effects of the suit of heterodox monetary policy to encourage credit delivery to the real sector of the economy, especially in the light of the subsequent implementation of the loan-to-deposit ratio policy. In view of the foregoing, committee decided by a unanimous vote to retain monetary policy rate at 13.5% and to hold other policy parameters constant. In summary, the MPC voted 1. Retain MPR at 13.5%, 2. Retain asymmetric corridor at plus 200 and minus 500 basis points around the MPR, 3. Retain the CRR at 22.5%, and 4. Retain the equity ratio at 30%. I thank you for listening.
Now joining us to speak on the issue is Paul Alaje, an economic and financial analyst. You're welcome to Business Express once again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, now decisions taken, rates retained. Did you really expect the rates to be retained?
It's what is expected, looking at what is happening between China and America, global economic crisis, and also what you're experiencing in Europe, particularly with United Kingdom, talking about England and the policies they're saying we want to observe Brexit, that they would like to leave Eurozone by end of October. So any country that tries to increase rates unnecessarily now, we of course discourage investment. And you could hear clearly what the CBN governor, who is the head of Monetary Policy Committee, had mentioned, that increasing MPR is like not wanting to deliver more credit to private sector because it will have impact on interest rates. Secondarily, if you reduce it below what it is today, you might also discourage investment. So what is expected, liquidity ratio remaining at 30%, CRR cash reserve, requirement of cash reserve ratio, as the case may be, at 22.5. It's just what I think is right for this moment, and is what a lot of us had expected, and that is what we're saying.
Okay, now efficiency in revenue drive is one of the decisions, or will I say the advices that the MPC thought to give out to the fiscal arm of government, that is that the VAT rate is actually too little to bridge the gap of the financial demand. What is your perception?
Clearly,
towards
when
that?
you look at what Nigeria requires as a country in terms of economy, economy of approximately 375 billion US dollars, doing over 5 to 7% of that in a tax revenue, you see, it's quite low. Now we need to balance that with expanding number of people that pay VAT. The truth is that not so much people pay VAT, and that is why the FRS chairman has said that while government might be considering increasing VAT, he would also want to put in the bracket that more and more people should expand the cost. The argument since President Buhari mentioned it in 2018 that the biggest challenge to government fiscal harm is revenue generation, and that cannot be overemphasized, and it's more to what's national government, talking about state government, they are more affected. That is why the Minister of Finance had mentioned that we might need to increase VAT to 7.2% from current regime of 5%, so that more state and local government was responsible for approximately 5% of that revenue. We have more particularly to pay minimum wage.
So now talking about the subnationals, the states, only yesterday the state governors were at the central bank, and 10 commodities have been prioritized by the central bank to see that they bridge the gap of unemployment to employment, and also to meet the financial demands. Do you think the central bank is biting more than it can chew?
Clearly, it's biting more than they chew, but nobody has the teeth to bite other than central bank. It's biting more than they can chew. We only need to give central bank additional teeth to bite more. Because if central bank were not in the picture, globally, there are economic crisis. The global growth rate is lower than what you had in 2014, 2012, and 2002. So global rate growth projection is emaciated. Nigerian growth rate for this year is about 2%. Who else has the fund to help grow and the structure and strategy to grow? Perhaps until now that we have more economists in the Economic Advisory Council, maybe new ideas will come in the coming period. But for me, while CBN does that, we need more from fiscal authority, particularly from states. States, we need to set up their own economic council individually so that they can meet up and perhaps employ more people. When you look at unemployment figures, quite high, but when you look at the states where you should be expecting low unemployment figure, they are perhaps have higher unemployment rate.
Okay, so you're talking about the unemployment rate also and meeting all these needs. Another issue raised by the central bank governor just some moments ago is enhanced credit facility. How do you see this playing out before the year runs out? Do you see it giving any form of changes considering all steps you've taken?
CBN have tried to policy. About 3 MPC meetings ago, they've introduced some level of guarantee other than you bringing property assets to have access to loan. Apart from that, they brought another policy in the last MPC meeting. The bank, where they will now limit banks to certain amount that must go to that must be used to buy treasury bill and bond. That will remain with them to do other things, but most money should go into credit facility. How much of percentage banks have made is not yet in the public domain. Maybe when they share the information with us, but clearly we need to be innovative in giving credit. See, in advanced country, small businesses, macro and small businesses are the major employers of labor, and we need to do that in Nigeria by advancing credits, facilities to these small businesses. Unfortunately, because of the structure we have, they will not be able to provide the kind of requirement, security for those loans that commercial bank will give to them. So it's easy to break deposit money by commercial bank because they will want to secure their funds. So we as Nigerians will then blame them for not giving facility. But the question is, they also don't want to risk depositors' fund and shareholders' fund. So that is where CBN will come, perhaps, to play some level of roles, perhaps, and maybe encouraging credit bureau that we have now in the country to ensure that people know their credit rate and mandate them to come out more, so that before an individual goes to any financial institution, maybe the deposit money back or other financial institution, such person also understand that I need to know my credit rating. So approaching a commercial bank or other financial institution is relatively easier to access credit.
Okay, the governor also advised the federal government to adopt a big bang approach, those were his words, to addressing the fiscal issues concerning the country. If you were to put it into a perspective, what is the big bang approach the federal government is in need of now, especially with the advisory council now coming in?
Now, it actually depends on what he refers to as that, but clearly we need a unique approach. We need an approach that goes beyond creating 2,000, 25,000, say 500,000. Those are good things, but because of the necessity that we have in our hands, millions of young people, particularly youth unemployment, we need big bang approach. We need an approach that reach out to more other than what we have right now. And in doing this, we need it to be structured. It should be coming at the same time. Monetary authorities, we need to reduce interest rate to government. We also need to do some level of, for me, I would say, structural transformation for the economy, which would include perhaps transforming the economy from primary in nature to secondary. And by primary, you know, Nigeria does majorly crude oil is responsible for most of our, say, federation revenue in the federation. But how do we change that? Because that's what is responsible for in the GDP component is less than 10%. So how do we change that from crude oil or oil, as the case may be responsible for 8% and look for something which is manufacturing? And I'm happy the authorities are also mentioning the issue of manufacturing and perhaps looking for ways to make more and more people. The good news here is that Manufacturing Association of JJ also gave Mr. President thumbs up when he set up National Economic Council. The question is, in 6 months' time, in 1 year time, would the president have achieved 10 million reduction in poverty, which of course is his vision, as mentioned to us June 12. The only way we can do this is not narrow perspective. It has to be broad, it has to be big, it has to be robust.
Okay, now the reserves. The governor also spoke about maintaining the nation's reserves. But with all these demands, we're still borrowing. And of course, we're about to go into the debt market again. So where should we put this money we're borrowing that will yield the desired results?
Two things. When we refer to reserves in economics or finance, we should know that they are talking about two different things. When you talk about foreign reserve, we're talking about monies that we have in hard currency. It's not necessarily money that we can spend as a country. So the reserve may be growing or reducing. It has nothing to do with the money we have. It only shows that we have enough funds to meet emergencies when there is demand for it. Again, we cannot talk about national savings, which is also a form of reserves. So, which of course is not what you refer to there. We are going to debt market because as it is, we have no option. We have not yet innovated in revenue drive and revenue generation, because when you tax more and the economy's GDP is 1.9%, then we may go back to recession, which is an angle we God forbid that we don't go to. So authorities also need to make policy to ensure, particularly CBN and fiscal authority, to ensure that we don't go back into recession. We keep growing, which of course you can see government from time to time is now trying to balance policies to ensure that as much as we want to collect revenue, we also don't go to recession. We also don't make this economy crumble and go down overnight. So when you talked about that reserve, yeah, we'll go to debt market, we borrow money, but where do we put it? For me, to be infrastructure. It's infrastructure that guarantees everybody in terms of what they can make from the economy. It's not going to be going into payment of salaries or overheads. But when you put the money on roads, when you put the money on power, when you put the money on education, when you put it on health, you are going to reap the dividend. You will build educated and healthy population that will make money, and tax authority will collect from them in turn, then more money comes to the table.
Now,
this is where we can talk about more revenue for the country and the growth that we desire as a country.
Okay, talking tax, and now the issue about increasing the VAT rate is still hanging, with Nigerians having divergent views, and also we now have the cashless policy also on deposits and withdrawals, also having another round of issues being thrown up to the public space. How do you think this is going to aid financial inclusion, which is one of the targets of the central bank?
Now, first, this policy introduced by central bank, I think a couple of days ago, is not new. It started 2011. CBN practiced it to, I think, upwards to 2014, 2015, before it was put to cashless policy. The CBN is not introducing in all the states that do heavyweight finance, heavyweight transaction, which about 5 or 6 states with the FCT are the states that are going to be affected. What CBN is saying is, we would prefer you do online banking. You will do electronic banking so that we can capture money. Do you know the truth? And those that are watching me all around the globe today, it costs money to print money. So each time you hold money, if you roughen it, you are weakening it. At the end of the day, we'll return it back to the CBN, and CBN, we have to print another one. It costs almost 5 naira to print 5 naira notes. So who is losing, who is gaining? So CBN is saying that rather than us, devaluing our currency or spending more money to print what don't bring immediate returns, or it's not giving us some sort of economic value, it is better, it saves us more money to use electronic banking, which of course is what is global best practice these days, and that will encourage more people. Unfortunately, as good as it sounds, it has its own limitation. First, we have to also look at data so that when you transfer a fund, you don't have to revert it back when you have an emergency that you need to respond to. Again, when people now go around with a lot of cash, they are also prone to risk, which of course is another major issue where central bank, Nigerians may need to consider in this policy. I know it's high when you say you want to charge 2-3% or 2% on withdrawal on just 500,000 naira from an individual, approximately 20,000 naira. It's a lot of money, but CBN, we also now need to listen to people, perhaps to implement this policy in phases, from 1% to 2% to 3% for individual and corporate. But the truth is, the information came really late, in my own opinion. It's not that information has
so why do you say it's late?
But it is not effectively communicated to the people. The time it came to social media was just 2 days before it started trending. So their platform CBN would decide to trend this information so that people would have raised their issue before the implementation. So
you're suggesting there should be more awareness.
More awareness. You can decide to come to NTA, for instance, and just run hard regarding the new policy. You might get actors to do something drama and put it in African Magic where most women will watch. You might go beyond that. You might put it on different platforms.
Why does it have to be the women?
No, women watch movies these days, and you know women watch sports for men. They watch for Nigerian football, foreign football. You put the information there. This is central bank we're talking about. Policy made by monetary authority is to the benefit of all. Now, the reservation that people have is that my bank is charging me at different fronts. I also think CBN Communication Department, we need to come out to tell Nigerians those charges that are illegal, those charges that are excessive, those charges that have been banned. For instance, a number of rates, if merchant charge has been reduced if you use POS to pay, and a business person, there is reduction as to what the account holder should charge you. I mean, the bank maintaining the account should charge you on every POS transaction. It came together with this policy, but it's not so obvious. CBN, we need to do more to make this information more available to people and to take as kind of stronger decision.
Thank you very much for sharing your opinions with us, Mr.
Thank
Paul.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, so moving on, the federal, states and local government areas shared 740.88 billion naira as federal allocation for the month of August. This was contained in a communique issued at the end of the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee FARC meeting chaired by the Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris. The gross statutory revenue, 631.79 billion naira received for August, was lower than 674.36 billion naira received in July. Revenue available from VAT for August was 88.08 billion naira as against the 94.15 billion naira distributed in the previous month. The nation may be losing up to $2 billion annually if urgent action is not taken to curb vandalism and oil bunkering in the Niger Delta region. The National Economic Council ad hoc committee set up to look into these gave the warning and recommends that the federal government should put measures in place to checkmate this trend. Now, Jide Onifadi reports.
The ad hoc committee constituted by the National Economic Council to address the impact of vandalization, oil theft and illegal bunkering on oil production, and to check the effectiveness of the activities of the Joint Task Force and other security agencies in curbing the menace of oil theft, and also to consider the setting up of a special court to prosecute offenders, amongst others.
The ad hoc committee, in its findings, discovered that there were huge losses In fact, the NNPC reported to the committee that 22.6 million barrels of crude oil, valued at approximately $1.35 billion, was lost during the first half of this year. And that if this situation is not contained, by full year, we would have lost in excess of $2.7 billion US.
Governor Godwin Obaseki of Edo State, who is heading the ad hoc committee, says the committee recommends to NEC on how to check the activities leading to these losses, and here are some of the recommendations.
That there is a need to restructure the maintenance and ownership of all pipelines as a way of tackling the perpetrators of crude and other products. That we should have a legal framework that will ensure that criminals are duly prosecuted, imprisoned, and their assets confiscated.
Another subcommittee, that of the committee looking into the farmers and herders crisis, also made presentation and recommendations which will guide the federal and state government on the implementation of the National Livestock Transformation Program, which is aimed at addressing the business of animal husbandry as a whole.
$100 billion budget was proposed by the committee to support the project. Federal government is to contribute 80% in grants to support states, while states will contribute land, project implementation structure, personnel, and 20% cost of the project.
The Central Bank of Nigeria has again expressed commitment to unlocking the growth and employment potentials of Nigeria as a panacea for the economic challenges facing the nation. Governor of the bank, Godwin Emefiele, at a meeting with the Nigerian Governors Forum in Abuja, said the bank's initiatives to enhance agricultural development also aims to improve capacity of industries and conserve foreign exchange, which has taken new dimensions. The report. Diversification of Nigeria's economy is no small feat, as developmental demands compete for scarce resources available, one of which is meeting up with wage bills. In real terms, the non-oil sector contributed 91.18% to the nation's GDP in the second quarter of 2019, but oil revenue is still king. Following President Buhari's directive on conserving forex, the Apex Bank has identified 10 key commodities as crucial enterprises to be developed along the value chain to achieve the desired goals.
Delivering food from farm to market has been the biggest problem. Close to about 50 to 60% of all agricultural output get destroyed before they move from farm to market.
The CBN has an ultimate objective to make states economically viable through enhanced investments by the private sector, which will in turn create more economic opportunities at a subnational level, engage youth in meaningful enterprises, and improve internally generated revenue base for states to meet the developmental expectations of their citizens. This is in addition to the Anchor Borrowers Program. All right, our data just coming in from the Nigerian Stock Exchange indicates that the market closed in positive territory. It advanced by 0.19%. That is the all-share index to close at 27,698.69 points. The volume of trade was 177.5 million, valued at 5.94 billion naira in 3,484 deals, and market capitalization 13.4 trillion naira. The top trades were Nigerian Breweries, Guaranty Trust Bank, and FBN Holdings. Asia Pacific stocks edged up amid U.S.-China trade jitters. Details with Boss Abel.
The latest development on the trade war between the world's two largest economies de-escalating their long-running trade war saw some global markets edging higher in early trading of Friday 28th September. Stocks in Asia appreciated as investors digested a series of developments overnight on the U.S.-China trade front that dampened hopes of a deal being reached between the two economic powerhouses. Hang Seng Index was lower as of its final hour of trading. Nikkei rose 0.16% to 22,079.09, and the Shanghai Composite also from 0.24% to about 30,006.45. U.S. stock index futures were slightly higher. Dow futures rose 23 points, indicating a positive open of more than 10 points. Future on the S&P 500 was unchanged, while Nasdaq was marginally higher. European stocks started trade on a negative note. DAX depreciated 0.24%, FTSE 0.09%, and CAC 0.13%. African stocks were mixed. South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 and Tunisia's Tunidex appreciated, while Namibia's overall index, Nairobi's All-Share, and Ghana's GSA Composite Index were negative.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Business Express. You can access all previous episodes on YouTube, and you can also communicate with us on Twitter. And the social media handle on Twitter is NTA News Now, using the hashtag BizX. We value your feedback, so keep the mails coming and join us again on Monday. Keep thinking and doing business. God bless Nigeria.